The $1 trillion blind spot, why we're ignoring our greatest economic asset. Good afternoon. I want to start by introducing you to someone whose work is not just reshaping how we think about economic empowerment, it's dismantling the very foundations of who we believe deserves a seat at the table of innovation and wealth creation. Jessica Edwards is a visionary leader, a disruptor in the truest sense of the word, and someone who is quietly building the infrastructure for a revolution, one Black woman entrepreneur at a time. Her insights don't just challenge the status quo, they expose the absurdity of it. And what she revealed to me, what the data confirms, what the stories prove beyond any shadow of doubt, is this: we are sitting on $1 trillion economic gold mine, and we are choosing, actively choosing, to ignore it. Today, I want to share what I learned from Jessica, because what she showed me will make you question everything you think you know about innovation, investment, and economic power. Let me ask you something. And when you think about entrepreneurship in North America, what image comes to mind? Maybe it's a hoodie wearing tech founder in Silicon Valley. Maybe it's a venture capitalist shaking hands over $1 billion deal. Maybe it's the glossy magazine covers celebrating unicorn startups and disruptive technologies. But here's what most people don't know. And this is where it gets interesting. Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs on this entire continent. Not just growing, the fastest. They are launching businesses at rates that outpace nearly every other demographic. They are innovating in industries from technology to beauty, from healthcare to education, from finance to food. They are creating jobs, they are building communities, they are solving problems that others overlook or ignore entirely. And yet, despite all of this, despite their resilience, their creativity, their sheer determination, their proven track record of building something from nothing, Black women entrepreneurs receive less than 1% of venture capital funding in North America. Less than 1%. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Really sit with it. We live in a world that claims to worship at the altar of innovation. We celebrate disruption. We reward risk takers. We build monuments to those who dare to dream big and build bigger. And yet, the very group leading the charge in entrepreneurship, the group with the highest growth rate, the group proving over and over and over again that they can build, scale, and succeed against impossible odds, is systematically, structurally, deliberately denied the resources they need to thrive. This is not just unfair. This is not just a social justice issue. This is economically irrational. This is a massive, catastrophic loss, not just for Black women, but for every single one of us. Because here's the truth that Jessica Edwards helped me see, the truth that should keep every economist, every investor, every policymaker awake at night. Supporting Black women entrepreneurs is not charity. It is not a diversity checkbox. It is not something we do to feel good about ourselves. It is smart economics. It is the kind of investment that could unlock trillions, yes, trillions with a T, in economic growth and innovation. Let me tell you a story. There's a groundbreaking study called the FoundHers Report. Researchers surveyed over 1,500 Black women founders across Canada to document their entrepreneurial journeys. And what they found was both inspiring and absolutely devastating. 63% of these women had to self fund their businesses. We're talking about amounts up to $100,000. They used personal savings, they maxed out credit cards, they borrowed money from family members who could barely afford to lend it. They drained retirement accounts. They took second mortgages. They did whatever it took. 43% could not secure any external funding at all. Zero. They walked into banks and were turned away. They pitched to investors and were overlooked. They reached out to networks and found doors closed in their faces. They were excluded from the very systems designed to fuel entrepreneurship and innovation. And yet, here's the part that should make every single one of us angry and ashamed. They built anyway. They grew anyway. They succeeded anyway. They created jobs anyway. They innovated anyway. They transformed communities anyway. But just imagine for a moment what they could do if the playing field were level. Imagine the jobs they could create if they had access to capital. Imagine the innovations they could bring to market if they had mentorship. Imagine the communities they could transform if they had the networks that others take for granted. The FoundHers Report didn't just document struggle, it documented potential. It showed that closing the funding gap for Black women entrepreneurs could inject billions, potentially trillions, into the economy. It could create hundreds of thousands of jobs. It could foster the kind of innovation that doesn't just disrupt industries, it creates entirely new ones. And yet, we continue to leave this potential sitting on the table, untapped, ignored, wasted. Now, let me tell you about an organization in Canada called the Black Women Collective. This organization was born out of frustration and necessity. The founders looked at the data, looked at the barriers documented in reports like FoundHers, and said, enough. We're going to do something about this. They built something different. They created education programs, mentorship opportunities, and financial literacy training specifically designed for Black women entrepreneurs. They recognized something that mainstream entrepreneurship spaces refuse to acknowledge. Even programs focused on women often exclude Black women. Even in spaces claiming to champion diversity, Black women find themselves on the outside looking in. The Black Women Collective understood that geographic concentration in major cities left rural and remote entrepreneurs isolated and invisible. They saw that without targeted intentional support, the funding gap wouldn't just continue, it would widen. So they built virtual mentorship programs that increased accessibility, especially after the pandemic turned the world upside down. They offered financial literacy training that empowered women to navigate systems explicitly designed to keep them out. They advocated for more inclusive funding policies at every level of government. And the results, hundreds of Black women gained skills, confidence, and real tangible business growth opportunities. They learned to pitch with power. They learned to negotiate without apology. They learned to scale with strategy. They built networks that opened doors previously locked. They transformed their businesses and, in the process, transformed their lives and the lives of everyone around them. But here's what struck me most powerfully about the Black Women Collective's work. And this is where Jessica Edwards really drove the point home. Their work highlights the staggering economic loss we all suffer when we underfund Black women's businesses. Every single dollar not invested in a Black woman entrepreneur is a dollar that could have created jobs, generated tax revenue, driven innovation, and strengthened entire communities. Every business that fails or stalls because of lack of access to capital is not just a personal tragedy for that founder, it's an economic loss for the entire economy. For all of us, we are literally inexplicably leaving money on the table, piles and piles of money. And for what? For outdated biases, for systemic barriers we're too comfortable or too cowardly to dismantle? Let me tell you about another initiative that's changing lives right now. It's called SheWorks California. This program was designed to help Black women gain skills, access jobs, and build leadership capacity in California, a state with one of the largest economies in the world. The women who participate in SheWorks face wage gaps that are not just unfair, they're criminal. They face housing instability that makes it nearly impossible to focus on building a business or a career. They face underrepresentation in leadership roles that sends a clear message You don't belong here. Your ideas don't matter. Your leadership isn't needed or wanted. SheWorks said otherwise. They provided job training that actually leads to employment. They offered mentorship from people who understand the unique challenges these women face. They created community support systems that don't just offer advice, they offer real practical help. And the outcomes were nothing short of transformative: increased employment rates, real leadership development, record breaking voter turnout, surging entrepreneurship, women who were told they didn't matter suddenly leading in their communities and industries, claiming space they always deserved but were never given. SheWorks. California is doing something revolutionary. They're transforming data into action. They're not just talking about disparities and shaking their heads sadly, they're closing them. They're empowering Black women to lead, to build, to thrive, to rewrite the narrative that's been written for them for far too long. But here's the question that Jessica Edwards left me with, the question that haunts me, the question I want to leave burning in your mind today. Why does it take specialized programs, targeted initiatives, and tireless, exhausting advocacy just to give Black women entrepreneurs a fighting chance? Why is access to capital, mentorship, and networks and things that are freely, easily available to others so impossibly hard for Black women to obtain? The answer is uncomfortable. The answer is systemic. The barriers are not accidental. They are not unfortunate byproducts of a well meaning system. They are built into the very structures of our economy, our financial systems, our networks of power and influence. And until we actively, intentionally dismantle those barriers, until we invest in Black women entrepreneurs at the level they deserve, we will continue to lose out on the economic growth, the innovation, the leadership, the transformation that they are ready, willing, and more than able to provide. Now, I want to connect this to something deeper, something that speaks to the heart of what the soft girl era really means. Because what Jessica Edwards revealed to me is not just about economics, it's about redefining strength. It's about releasing the cape. It's about creating space for rest, for boundaries, for self prioritization, even in the midst of building empires. Black women entrepreneurs are so often forced into survival mode. They hustle harder than anyone else. They work longer hours. They sacrifice more. And why? Because they have to, because the systems are stacked against them, because they don't have the safety nets, the funding, the support, the networks that others rely on and take for granted. But survival mode is not sustainable. And survival is not the same as thriving, not even close. The soft girl era is about shifting from grinding to grounding. It's about recognizing that softness is not weakness. It's a radical, revolutionary act of self love. It's about learning to say no without drowning in guilt. It's about setting boundaries without apology. It's about resting without needing to explain or justify yourself to anyone. And for Black women entrepreneurs, this shift is not just personal, it's economic, it's political, it's revolutionary. Because when we support Black women entrepreneurs, when we invest in their businesses, when we provide the mentorship, the networks, the capital they need and deserve, we're not just helping them succeed. We're giving them permission to thrive, to build on their own terms, to lead without burning out, to rest without guilt, to create without constantly fighting for survival. We are creating the conditions for a new kind of entrepreneurship, one that values sustainability over hustle, community over competition, wholeness over sacrifice, humanity over endless grinding. So here's where we land. Here's the truth we can no longer ignore. Black women entrepreneurs are not asking for handouts. They're not asking for special treatment. They're asking for what they have earned, what they deserve, what should have been theirs all along. Access, opportunity, and investment. They are asking us to see the economic power they represent, the innovation they are driving, the communities they are building, the future they are creating. And when we finally do see it, when we finally invest in Black women entrepreneurs at the level they deserve, we won't just be doing the right thing. We will be doing the smart thing. We will be unlocking trillions in economic growth. We will be fostering the kind of innovation that changes industries, transforms communities, and builds a better, more equitable, more prosperous future for all of us. So here's my challenge to you. Here's the question you need to answer before you leave this room, before you go back to your life, before you fall back into the comfort of the status quo. What will you do? Will you seek out Black women entrepreneurs in your network and offer mentorship, connections, or capital? Will you advocate for more inclusive funding policies in your organization, your community, your industry? Or will you challenge the assumptions and biases that keep Black women entrepreneurs underfunded, undervalued, and overlooked? Because the truth is, we all have a role to play, every single one of us. And the cost of inaction is too high. The cost of ignoring this is too great. The cost of leaving this $1 trillion opportunity on the table is something we simply cannot afford. The soft girl era is not just about rest and boundaries, it's about reclaiming power, it's about redefining success, it's about building a world where Black women can thrive, not just survive. And that world doesn't start someday. It doesn't start with someone else. It starts with you. It starts with us. It starts today. Thank you.